ahead and get started. So everybody knows it's going to be a fairly quick session. As it stated kind of in the description, I'm not going to do a full click-through PDM demo, more of, kind of the highlights of it, and then maybe some justification. Let's look at some of the values, monetary values that we can assign to some of the benefits that you might be able to use to get this implemented right away, sooner than later. So again, welcome to how to justify your data management investment. Here's a real quick agenda for you. So as I just stated, we're going to just do some brief overview, hit on kind of the 5 pillars of PDM. It's a very involved software. It can do a lot of stuff, but main focus today is going to be on file relations, searching, collaboration and rights management, automation, revisions, and then we'll jump into looking at some of the justification that you can use for it. I do have Noah Krieger, who is one of our product managers for our data management solutions, in the background here, kind of moderating this session, answering any questions. So if he jumps in, I told him to feel free to interrupt me. If he hops in, just so you guys know who else will be talking here, as well as answering any questions or anything that pops up in the chat. So if you guys have questions throughout the session, feel free to drop them in that questions pane. We'll try and get them answered. I'll also review them live at the end of it if they aren't, and we can try and get those addressed. Let's go ahead and get started here. So before we dive into specifically PDM, I know a lot in the past I've talked to people that maybe aren't SOLIDWORKS users and don't have a good understanding of how SOLIDWORKS works in regard to file management and relationships. So I thought that might be a really good place to start, just to maybe get a better understanding of what your engineers or designers are doing and having to deal with if you're not familiar with that. So first, I just have a basic file structure on the left-hand side, looking at, picture this being a local file storage, or maybe on a network. You've got a projects folder and then, sub-projects underneath that. And every time we create a new SOLIDWORKS part or assembly or drawing, those need to be saved somewhere. So, we'll create that, we'll add our geometry, we'll go ahead and we'll save that. And that gets put into the file directory. In this case, we're just going to save that right under this project. And as our company grows, this is obviously going to get much larger, and our database is going to continue to expand. A lot more design files are going to be created. Now, with SOLIDWORKS, typically design parts which will be inserted into an assembly, and then that could be a sub-assembly inserted into another one. And there's relationships that are created between each one of those files. And so here, I'm kind of going to create another sub-assembly here. Maybe it's a second project, it's a different design. And one of the big benefits of a parametric modeler like SOLIDWORKS is being able to reuse your design data. And in this case, this part 1 in this example was a perfect fit. We're going to reuse that on the assembly 2, even though that assembly 2 is part of a different project. And so we're just going to browse out to that file location in Windows Explorer and drag and drop that in, and everything works perfectly. We don't need to redesign that at all, or re-download it if it's a purchased component. Now, what's really going on the back end is SOLIDWORKS is managing those references. So when you open up an assembly, it's looking for the specific file name in that specific file location, being that folder hierarchy. So you can see, part 1 is it has been saved in our projects folder, the PRJ 2021-001, and then as well as part 2. And some of the things that can go wrong, that can happen, are renaming files. And I know I'm a big culprit of this. I'm not clever when I'm designing. I'm just part 1, part 2, part 3. I'm not trying to think of names. I don't know what my design is going to morph into eventually. And so a lot of times when you finish up that design, you want to go back and you want to clean a lot of that stuff up. And that's where you can run into some problems. Say I go into Windows Explorer and I rename that part 1 to bracket. The next time I open up that assembly, because that file path and file name has been saved inside of that assembly, SOLIDWORKS isn't going to be able to find that. And you're going to get prompted with a message, this file can't be found. Do you want to browse for it? So really can be a big problem there in organizing your data and naming it what you want. Another big issue would be moving files. So in this case, with design reuse, a lot of people tend to try and structure things, standard components or a library folder. for things that get reused over, especially in multi-user environments, or collaborative environments. And so while I was designing this, I maybe went out and downloaded a component, saved it into that project folder, but then realized, hey, I should probably, this file would be much better fit for, our library folder. And so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to move that up into our standard library folder. And just like renaming the file, from that part 1 to bracket, this time, because it's looking at that full file or extended file path, including the name, the part name didn't change, but the location did. So again, we're going to get prompted with that same message. This file cannot be found or unable to locate it. Would you like to browse for it? And we're going to have errors in our assembly next time that we open those up. So hopefully that kind of gave you a good foundation or background for those of you that aren't SOLIDWORKS users on how the software manages those relationships and some of the benefits and power behind that, being able to reuse that data. Now moving into PDM, what it really does is it manages that for you. So it uses SQL Server as the database. It has an archive server where it actually stores those files, and it embeds or stores the file path and location and name as metadata of a record, think of it as, right, in SQL. And so using PDM, we have full capabilities to move, to rename all of these things, and everything is remapped appropriately. So full flexibility there to do whatever we want, make sure our data is organized, appropriately named for what it should be, as well as all the correct metadata or information or properties about those files without having to worry about managing all those file references. Another big kind of pillar to PDM is going to be searching. It's stat out there is engineers spend up to 2 hours a day or 20% of their time, searching for files, trying to find stuff. And, I've tried to do this in the past, create a folder structure that makes sense, that I'll be able to go out and find what I need when I need it. But a lot of times, you end up running into scenarios where something might make sense to reside in more than one folder, and then you might put it in one and not remember which one you put it in. Now, there are some, searching capabilities in Windows Explorer, but I'm sure you guys have all seen this, bar across when you use that. If you're searching on any kind of sizable directory, file cannot be found, or not found, excuse me. Indexing may be slow, and you come back after lunch and it's still chugging along. So it's very slow, and frankly, I get kind of irritated for how long that takes, and so it's cumbersome to try and find that information or that data when you need it. Working inside of PDM, as I mentioned before, it has a SQL on the back end, so there is information or metadata or properties that are stored with all of those files, and we can search on all of that stuff in the vault at any point in time. Because it is using SQL, it's almost instantaneous, as well as it's an iterative search, meaning I can search for, say, bracket in my entire vault, and yes, in my vault you get a very long return or a big list. And if I wanted to find, say, for example, a steel bracket, I could refine that search by going into the material field and typing in steel, and that would refine files that only fit both of those criteria. So doing those Boolean operations really allow you to refine your search, find what you need when you need it, almost instantaneously, so you don't lose your train of thought while you're designing. Next section here is going to be on collaboration and rights management. And for this, I'm just going to play out a simple example. You have 2 users who are working on the same file, right? One comes in early, they open up the file. The second one comes in a little bit later. They both make changes. The first person, because they were in early, goes to lunch early, save it back to the network. They go to lunch. Second person saves theirs back. They go to lunch a little bit later and ends up overwriting the first one. Obviously, the first person is not happy about that. They've lost their entire morning of work. Second person, may have no idea that that had even happened because they were unaware that, the first person even had that file open. So went completely unnoticed in this scenario. And that's just a 2-person environment. When you're talking about, potentially larger engineering groups, 20, 50, whatever number of people, obviously it gets much more complex. And this is, really handled in PDM by using a check-in, check-out, and full versioning process of these files. So here's a simple example of a workflow that's set up to manage the engineering release process. We've got 3 states in here, as well as 3 different users to play this out. So the first state is going to be the concept state, and we've got an approval state and released. Envision the people that are going to be working with the files in the concept state as our engineers or designers. In the approval state, we've got potentially maybe a manager that needs to do a design review on that, look it over, approve that for the final release. Then once that file is released, maybe it's somebody on the shop floor or in manufacturing that just needs to view that file, look at the drawing, but they're never going to make any changes to it. So when that file is created, we're going to save it in the vault, and like I said, we use a check-in, check-out process to take ownership of that. And some of the granular permissions that we can control here are with the engineers. When that file is in that concept state, they're the only ones that are able to check in, check out that file. Managers can't make changes, but they can see that that file has been created, right? And then the guys on the shop floor have no idea. They log into the vault, they don't even see that file at all, so they have no recognition of its existence. Engineer, checks out that file, makes changes, checks it back in, which makes it available to the rest of the company. And they're going to, send that over to the approval. It's just a simple right click and send this for approved. That's, again, another piece of that metadata that's associated with that file and visible to everybody in the company. At this point in time, the manager has the read-write permissions, so they can check it out, make changes, send it back to concept if they wanted to have the engineer make some design modifications if needed. But the engineers are only read-only, so they can't make any changes to this file. And still, in this early development process of it before it's released, our shop floor guys still don't know it even exists. Then finally, when that file gets released, everybody has read-only. At this point in time, typically, a bill of materials might be created, drawings might be printed off and sent to fabrication or manufacturing, purchasing might start ordering components, and so we don't want any changes to be made to this file, and so we really lock it down in that release state to be read-only, across the board for all users. Another big component of SOLIDWORKS PDM is the ability to do automation. A very common one is notifications. So as that file gets sent to approval, you might send an email to your boss saying, hey, can you look this over? Also, other document creation. Bill of materials here, for example, if you do need to enter it into an ERP or MRP or send it to somebody else, you create that bill of materials on the drawing, you right click on it, you save it out as an Excel file or a CSV, and then maybe make any modifications that are needed and manually enter that data, typically is what's done, into another business software solution. And so some of the things we can do, inside of PDM is to automate a lot of that stuff. Any of those tasks that are repetitive, no matter how big or small they are. So for sending those notifications, it's very common to automatically send either a Windows notification, a pop-up, or an email. Typically, users will set up rules, so they'll have just a folder in their Outlook inbox or whatever, that they can review at different times of the day to say, what do I all have to do? It's pretty much generating a task list for the individuals that need to do that work. Also, some of that exporting, creating the bill of materials, that's all done inside of PDM or Windows Explorer, so it doesn't require a license of SOLIDWORKS to pull the bill of materials. It's always going to be up to date with the CAD files, so purchasing or whoever could go in and pull that, but you can also take that a step further and integrate with your ERP, MRP, CRM, PLM, any other business software that you're doing. It's got a full-blown API, so if you want that information or that data to automatically push to any of those software solutions, it has full capabilities of that. Another really common automated task is going to be creating PDFs from your SOLIDWORKS drawings, so your detailed drawings that you might print out and bring over to your CNC. That's a very time-consuming task, having to open up each one of those files, save as PDF, and so that can be automated as that file, or as those files go from the approval stage to the release stage or state. It'll recognize the SLD DRW file extension, and it'll open those up on the back end and save out a PDF file and put it into whatever predefined folder that you would like. So, start thinking about that. Some other ones are serial numbering, something as simple as that. I know can be a big pain for a lot of companies. PDM has a full-blown, create whatever your serial number scheme is, whether it be an alphanumeric or a strictly numeric, and it'll just iterate to the next number. So you don't have to worry about that or interrupt your, thinking while you're designing. And the last one is, revisions. And it's, you're always going to have revisions. They happen, right? You're going to iterate, whether it's an issue that you're going to need to implement an engineering change for, or whether it's a design improvement. But they're always going to happen. And so how we handle that is by simply adding another transition in this workflow, which accounts for an engineering change process. So any of those files that are in that release state, remember they were all read-only, nobody can make any changes to them. We do have an engineering change request, as long as the user has permission, they can instantiate an engineering change process, just right click on that file, send it back to concept. It'll automatically, another use case for automation, automatically increment that revision variable. So we don't need to worry about that, manage it, ever be concerned about that being out of date. Move it back into that concept state so that engineering change or request can start getting that work done to it. So moving from there, we talked about some of the file management, some of the automation, searching capabilities. There's a lot more that PDM can do. I wanted to keep it fairly high level for you guys today. If you would like to see a further demonstration on that, please reach out to us. We can get into the clicks and picks and discuss some more of the functionality even further. But here I just wanted to hit quickly before we get off, maybe some rough ballpark numbers that we've put together over the years in terms of justification that you might be able to use to build ROIs, around implementing the software. So, the first one we're going to look at is just file references. So, getting out of that shared network drives, worried about the correct revision, or, having to go back and repair some of those broken references can be a big time investment. So ballparking that at 10% of an engineer's time they spend doing that, 5 engineers, $50 an hour for the engineer, equates to 4 hours a week for 48 weeks. That's $4,800 a year. Looking at the manual data entry, we talked about the bill of materials, having to save that out, consume a SOLIDWORKS license for that. So that can be a big one. Combining BOMs, right? If you have mechanical and electrical, manually having to do that, or re-entering all that information from a Excel sheet into an ERP or PLM, whatever. Figure that takes 20% of an engineer's time. Again, at that same rate, we're looking at $9,600 a year. These all start adding up. A lot of times, what we realize is that companies will recognize PDM for one specific functionality, and they'll be kind of, maybe that justifies the cost for the implementation, but then all of the other benefits might not be known. So these numbers really do add up quickly. Wrong revisions, I'm sure we've all run into that. I know I've gotten hollered at in the past for releasing that, but $500 I think is maybe generous in terms of what it could cost, depending on the industry that you're in, to scrap a part. You've got some costs in raw materials. You've obviously have the machinist time, and you're looking at, per every single wrong revision that is, made or manufactured, $1,800, right? That can add up very quickly. And then searching, and this is when I know I kind of hit on these numbers. I think I said 20% of the time earlier, which I think is the more accurate or more recent value for this. But even at 10% of an engineer's time searching, those same values, we're looking at $4,800 a year that your company could save, as well as the added benefit of being able to reuse that data, which, there's benefits downstream. If purchasing doesn't have to create another order number because they already have the manufacturer defined and prices worked out for it, there's time savings there. If you have a CNC group, they don't need to grab a new part that's exactly the same. Do your CAM work on it, tool pass, everything else. So the more you can reuse data and not create duplicates, that all just propagates and waterfalls into significant time and cost savings. And then finally, communication. We've all ran into this before. Communication is difficult. PDM makes it easy. Answering questions, getting notifications, using very similar numbers here, $4,800 a year across those 5 engineers, and that's only accounting for that engineering group. So, like I said, guys, today it was just a real quick one, high-level overview for you. I hope you got something out of it. If you do have questions, please reach out and let us know. A lot of people are concerned they see PDM, full data management system, and it seems like an overwhelming task to take on. We do offer, all the services that are needed to implement it. So a lot of the issues that can come into place are there's all these things that need to be configured. We're not sure how to do that. We have a team that can assist you with doing that. We also have essentially templates, think of them as implementations with predefined workflows, data cards, everything set up, that we've developed over the course of over 1,000 implementations that we've done with customers from 1 to 2 seat to enterprise level corporations. So, leveraging all those best practices that we've learned over the years. Also, in terms of hosting, we offer cloud hosting solutions. So if you don't have server on site, obviously we do on premises. If you do, but if you don't and you're looking for cloud solutions, we do offer that as well. And if you're looking at potentially, a big concern is the time it's going to take to do it. And so a lot of times what I'll recommend on that is a phase 1, a phase 2, a phase 3. I always preach the crawl, walk, run approach to implementing any kind of new software. And so that's something we do all the time with our customers is let's get this in right now, even if it's just for that check-in, check-out, that full audit trail, the collaboration, not overwriting each other's files. A lot of times you'll be able to build an ROI and justify the cost of the software for that and get it implemented right now, leverage it for that a year down the road, 6 months, whatever that timeline looks like. We can always come back in, reevaluate, what's your situation, what's your scenario, what else can we do with the software that we don't know maybe, or we can plan for that up front and then just add on top. It's really easy to do. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to join this webinar. If you have any questions, reach out to us, let us know. Implementation on some of this stuff can be as little as a couple of weeks. So think about some of these pains that you might be experiencing and how that could be kind of a month from now if you decide to go that direction. So that's about gonna wrap it up here. I'll check the questions real quick. Do you have anything?
Yeah, there's a question here on bill of materials. So more advanced examples of more advanced engineering change orders, for example, within PDM. So this is definitely something we can help out with. As Andy mentioned, our customers kind of cover the gamut from very simple vault configurations to we have some of our customers have very complex engineering change processes. That's definitely something that we can help you out with. Andy, I don't know if there's anything more live on this around.
Yeah. So what I'd recommend, Peter, reach out to us. We can hop on a call. We can discuss your needs a little bit further. And everybody has different engineering change processes. Different documents are associated with them. We have, several kind of boilerplate, I guess, things that we can implement to handle that. But there's also PDM is kind of the entry level. I shouldn't say entry level. Software for data management. We also offer other solutions getting into SOLIDWORKS Manage, which is more getting into that PLM space where you're talking about project, task, item management, where PDM is really focused on that data management. So there's some different ways that we can use PDM for it, but if you need to take it to that next level, SOLIDWORKS Manage might be a really good fit for that. And so, in those cases, let's hop on a call, let's discuss your needs and figure out, what solution is going to be the best fit and the best route forward for you.
That said, One thing I'd like to add, Andy, is on the ROI section for this. We've had in the past customers that have been pretty far along with the project of data management, know they wanted to implement it, but leadership, some stakeholders needed to see a more formal return on investment. We have a couple great tools internally we can leverage. We have some industry standards, obviously, but the key is that we want to make sure that any of the inputs reflect your exact use case. But the nice thing is that once we go through this process, you also have not only an accurate return on investment you can share with other stakeholders, it's accurate, and it's also the type of ROI that you can share with other board members, CXOs, et cetera, and so forth. So if you need any help on the ROI portion of this project, then we're happy to help you out with that as well.
Absolutely. Jesper, I'm looking at your question here. How can we extract a BOM from PDM that adds columns to the BOM with parameters inside of the SOLIDWORKS component? So with PDM, when I talked about the search section in the presentation, SQL manages all the metadata. Think of those as properties that are attached to that file, or parameters in your terms here. And once those are all set up to map appropriately to the file that's saved inside of PDM, you essentially just create a BOM in the admin tool and designate which columns you want to include in it. And you can create different variations of that, which people very often do. If they have built or purchased components, you can use that to filter them out or include or not include specific columns for that BOM. So it's just making sure that it's set up correctly, and then it's just a simple single click in PDM to export that as a CSV or Excel file. Parameter called vendor inside of SOLIDWORKS part. How would we display that? Yeah, so you just map that vendor to a variable in PDM, and then just make sure you include vendor as a column. I'd mentioned to Peter that's something we have an entire dedicated team. I'm actually part of that team, our enterprise solutions team here at Hawkridge Systems. That's all we focus on, is setting these things up, understanding your guys' issues, and then figuring out what the best solution for that is, best scalable solution for that is going forward. So feel free to let us know, and we can always have a conversation around that. Maybe a little brainstorm session. Those are my favorite. One's on to cooperate using shared driver. I guess for a small group of engineers, I'm not sure what you mean by shared driver. If you mean like shared network or folder location, that's exactly what this would do. You would set it up on one, and then everybody would be able to access that. So
yeah, and whether that's on premises or
yeah.
we can leverage cloud infrastructure, which we've had quite a bit of success with, predominantly in the last couple of years, leveraging obviously the two 800-pound gorillas in the cloud space are AWS and Azure. We have many customers that have PDM workloads on cloud infrastructure, and we can even do the heavy lifting for that for you as well in Azure.
Yep. Alex, your question, really good one. Can the metadata be changed by a non-SOLIDWORKS user if desired? For example, could a purchaser update the price of a purchased part? The metadata can be changed by a non-SOLIDWORKS user. They would have to have access to the vault, which would consume a license, and they would need to have the vault resides on a network. So as long as they can get access to the vault and they have permissions, yes, definitely outside users or non-SOLIDWORKS users could update that metadata. Yeah, Wensong, so through a network driver when working from home. So typically what you would do there is there's a couple ways to handle that. One would be, as Noah mentioned, hosting it on the cloud, which would be one option. Another way would be to do a remote desktop. If you have a machine at your company, you can set up a remote desktop connection, log into that, and then you would just have you'd be essentially working from a thin client at home. Another option would be just to simply VPN in. So as long as you can have access to that work network, you would be able to map that folder and set up a vault view and be able to work off of all those same files.
And then Andy, I don't think we addressed Eric's question about functionality with multiple versions of SOLIDWORKS. PDM Professional can be in the front of your CAD for a full 2 years. So for example, if your Vault PDM is 2021, it's compatible with 2020 and 19 SOLIDWORKS CAD compatibility. I think that was your question, but let me know if that wasn't your specific question.
Yeah, so yes, you can use PDM. It just needs to be ahead of it. Yeah, PDM with multiple versions.
Again, don't hesitate to reach out if this spurs some more thought. Murphy's Law after this, I'm sure you'll have more questions. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is all our team does, and love working on these type of projects.
Yeah, it looks like John just dropped another really good one in here too. Have PDM but no workflow set up, not really fully implemented, and that happens often, right? You know, maybe it was done several years ago, never got followed up with. Where should I start to get help resetting and getting help to fully utilize? That's something we do, you know, again, all the time. Typically, what we like to do there is a short assessment to understand, you know, where your business is at right now, what you'll benefit from. Have a couple of meetings, maybe some brainstorm sessions, figure out what makes the most sense for you. We can help you build that ROI around what features, functionality we should implement, and then we do have an entire service team that can help deliver those servers and actually, you know, do that setup for you. Really good question. Noah, do you want to take this one? Do we have a list of compatible PLM systems that we should consider?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have, similar to the ERP position on this, we've worked with all major ERP and PLM systems. We've also obviously displaced migrated from other legacy PLM systems into managed PLM. We don't have a preference. It's as long as it can handle, you know, leverage the open API of PDM, and we can export to that ERP or PLM or QMS system. It can pull in the XML folder. That's typically how we approach integration. That said, we also do have a dedicated software development team and middleware solutions as well if you need, say, a higher level of complexity on the integration. But as a rule of thumb, we've worked with all the major ERP and PLM systems.
So Sonny, maybe if you're evaluating a couple few, or if you're just looking for advice, again, shoot us an email or give us a call, and we can have a conversation around that. We're all pretty familiar with, as Noah stated, the major ones. And I'm sure a lot of the minor ones. We've got a fairly decent sized team here that will, you know, we all collaborate and we can have conversation internally. Has anybody worked with this? What are the advantages and potential disadvantages of it to make sure that you're fitted with the right solution? Martin, I'm not really 100% sure what you're asking there. Is there any way to have a folder that look like the older PDM standard? Or so PDM standard, are you thinking work group PDM? PDM standard should look exactly the same in terms of the interface as PDM Professional. It's all Windows Explorer based. Work group, yep, okay. There is no option for that. So PDM is a Windows Explorer based system. The reason that they went to that is because of the upgrade path to PDM Professional is seamless. Workgroup, there was always people that implemented it would require an implementation, it would require a data migration, and then if you did go to the PDM Professional, it required another data migration if you wanted to get some more of that extended functionality. And so that was what end of life in 2016, 17, something like that. I think Workgroup was
18. Yeah.
18. Okay. Yep. So now everything is going to be the PDM Standard or Pro working out of Windows Explorer. Awesome. Well, hey guys, again, I appreciate the time today, and thank you for all the awesome questions. It's really nice to have people participate. We're, here instead of having to try and Google search those. Love answering and helping you out. So if you have further questions or wanted to follow up on any of these things, reach out to us. We'll get something set up, and hope you have a great rest of the day.